So in this additional lesson on the use of the quarterstaff, we check out a technique adapted from bayonet fencing. As I said in another video, the quarterstaff is for us also kind of an entry-level weapon or tool for any kind of two-handed weapon or polearm. So like the lock-aber axe, the spart axe, the two-handed sword, pike or spear, but also bayonet fencing. This technique is a parry and counter thrust, which you can do effectively with a staff, but also the bayonet or half pike, like a boarding pike spontoon or a sergeant's halberd. We can also find similar technical concepts in bayonet fencing manuals from the 19th and 20th century, but also in, for example, Japanese bayonet fencing, today known as jukendo. So let's get into it. First, the solo drill preparation. We stand in the half staff grip. The parry motion is done by pulling the staff to your right side with a small rotating motion by turning your front hand to the inside. The rear hand does not move to your left because so you would overpace. Instead, you let it rest on your hip or even press a bit onto your hip. You can retreat or advance with that motion like you would use it more in defense or offense. The next step is to riposte with a thrust after the parry. This is done by pushing both hands forward. The front hand turns to your inside with the knuckles up, and so does the rear hand. This kind of rotating motion brings in your thrust more precise and with more power. Also, you can gain a little bit more of reach. The staff butt rests on the forearm of your rear hand, and the weapon is stabilized that way. Do not forget to retreat properly and pulling back your weapon again in a rotating motion. This is like ripping it out, so like ripping out the spear or bayonet point easier, but it also helps if your opponent manages to grab your shaft, and that way you pull it out of his hand. Next step is partner drills. First, you train the parry or deflected motion on the staff outheld by your partner. He holds it in the long grips stable, but not too tight, just natural. That way you can control your motion if it was correct. After that, you can start to add the thrust. Targets are the face, throat, or the side of the opponent. Sometimes you can also manage to hit the chest or the belly. Use linear footwork first, but then you can also add a traversing step to your inside. This changes your angle of attack a bit and keeps you away slightly from the opponent's weapon. Then you can add more offensive footwork. You get from out of distance into distance with an advanced step. Then you deflect and thrust on the lunge. Do not forget to retreat with some steps, but passing steps get you out of distance very fast. Then your partner does a thrust from a long grip after disengaging under your guard. You parry and riposte. That way you can learn to react properly to this a little bit slower thrust. Sometimes your partner should pull his staff back and retreat, so you can train how to follow him with your counter safely. After that, your partner also uses a thrust from the half-staff grip, which is more dangerous because you have much closer distance and he can thrust quicker. You can even make a longer drill out of this if your training partner tries to parry your counter the same way you did and put in the same counter thrust or another technique. So just play around with this concept a bit. Here we have two examples of this concept in sparring. We use these kind of soft bows, which are a little bit too wobbly, so it is harder to manage this technique than with real wooden staffs. But you can see that here, after some exchanges, how I use this parry motion to deflect thrust. I do not use the counter thrust because I was in a retreating motion. In the other example, I try to do the technique, but it does not work. Maybe because the bow staffs are just too wobbly, or maybe I just did it wrong. I don't know. However, when I retreat and my partner follows me and am missing with his strike, I use the opening to land the thrust in the motion we trained. And as you can see, even with the wobbly soft bows, this well-placed thrust was hurting. So imagine what a wooden staff would do, or one with metal tips, and of course a bayonet or spike.